What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel again. And today's video is kind of a sequel to a previous video that I posted about 2020 US presidential election. I'm getting a lot of quite good, extremely positive feedback in terms of like and dislike ratio about past two videos about American politics, my thoughts about education costs, my thoughts about automation and how they should go about a future economy, future healthcare, and future education and whatnot. So today's video, I thought I'm going to talk about different topic within the spectrum of politics in the United States. So which is immigration. But before going on to this immigration topic within the spectrum of politics, I want to add a little note on a previous video that I made, which was about automation. The title was called Avoid Escape AI Stealing Your Job. And I talked about how automation is going to come in pretty fast, and if you are not prepared, if your skills are not on par or aligned with a market demand, then your job, your traditional conventional job, would have been replaced by robots. And good timing, because yesterday or 2 days ago, Deutsche Bank, which is one of the biggest banks in Germany, Deutsche Bank, announced that they're going to cut down 18,000 jobs. I don't know the time frame, but they decided to cut down on jobs. I'm pretty sure that in the age of modern digital online banking, there's no need for so many employees. For example, I'm using online banking like TransferWise or Revolut or N26. N26 is an online banking. They don't have a physical office. Everything can be done online, or you can even deposit money through some of the grocery store and whatnot. Revolut, TransferWise offer extremely low banking fees. Specifically, speaking of the banking fees, they have zero bank maintenance fee, and their exchange rate is pretty much the same as foreign exchange market rate, meaning that they don't add any commissions or fees on top of a market rate, which almost all the conventional traditional banks add, and they make shit tons of money. So there's no need for people to be in a branch because it adds a lot of cost. And that's the reason why there's a huge trend. This didn't start yesterday. One of the biggest Japanese banks like Mitsubishi UFJ or SMBC, Mitsui Sumitomo, they're cutting down the jobs and the branches because they're just losing money. They're going to be replaced by robots and online software. But enough of that. Let's get on to a topic of immigration. I think this title should be Avoid Irresponsible Immigrants. And I can give you some few of my perspectives based on my observations and actual living experience in different countries. First of all, this is one of the probably most difficult topics in all politics when it comes to immigration, because there's no single country that I know of that is doing good when it comes to immigration policy. This is quite complicated, and there's no clear-cut right or correct, right or wrong, black and white answer, right? It's not like education where, it should be available for many people, or like health insurance costs. It should be available for people. But when it comes to immigration, this is really difficult because, where do you draw a line? Humanity versus national interest. There's a conflict of interest existing here. And one of the better countries that are doing this immigration policy I can think about is Canada. And one of the worst countries when it comes to applying and deploying immigration policies are France and Sweden. I give you some of the reasons. Canadian immigration policy is pretty clear and also stable. What I mean by that is for people to immigrate to Canada, they need to be highly skilled workers, meaning that they need to have qualified skills, for example, like software engineer, or like a lawyer or doctor, meaning that they have earning power before they come to Canada. And also there's a language requirement. So when it comes to immigration policy in Canada, we are talking about most of the time, they do accept refugees, asylum, but most of the immigrants are highly skilled workers, meaning that they're highly educated, they're not going to commit crimes because there's a correlation between low education and a high crime rate. So more educated and more earning power they have, then less likely for them to commit crimes, right? They have more stabilized life. And that's what Canadian government is doing. And I think it's working quite well because most people coming to Canada who want to immigrate to Canada, they do have pretty good jobs. And that's almost a requirement for them to come to Canada. They need to have like a work experience, and they need to have they need to be able to find a job there. Unless I'm excluding like a refugee, those are probably different parts about immigration policy, I guess. And one of the worst is France. They let a lot of refugees in. So when it comes to immigration policy, France, like European countries, are letting in a lot of refugees, right, from Northern Africa or Middle East. And I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It's their decision, right? But I can give you some insights. I've talked to like some of the native French people, and they are saying that native French are dying in terms of population size. A lot of immigrants, like refugees, are taking over France, and a lot of native like locals are not happy with how governments are treating refugees, because basically locals are working and are paying high tax, like 40+%, right? They pay tax and the government accepts the refugees. And those refugees don't necessarily have jobs, right? So they don't have a earning power, but they are taken care of by government, by the money that locals earn and they pay tax for. Meaning that a lot of refugees are getting free rides. And on top of that, there's a trend in developed countries, not in like European countries, but including Japan and North America. In developed countries, usually people tend to have less child compared to people in developing countries. Meaning that those refugees are going to have more babies in France, let's say, or Sweden, and they're getting a lot of benefits from government because childcare and stuff like that is the benefit is much more in Europe, but they don't pay tax because they come to those countries like France as refugees. So they don't pay money like a tax. They don't necessarily have like a job or something, but they get those childcare and education like benefits. It's a free ride. And they're gonna have more babies than local native French, meaning that 20, 30 years from now, France is going to be dominated by those refugees, like different ethnic groups. And that's what I heard from native French. They were pretty resentful about how French government has been doing about their immigration policy, because and I do understand, because of conflict of interest. Same in Germany, but less. But France is, I think, most messed up country in terms of immigration thing. And Sweden as well. In Sweden, there's like a little bit violent thing happened by those refugees from like Africa, right? And also population is shrinking. Those native locals population is shrinking, but they're letting in refugees, and they're going to take over the majority of population sooner or later, and they're getting free rides, and that's the issue. And also, if they are not highly skilled, if they are not trained, if they don't have skills to be able to find a job and then sustain their family and stuff, and they are not educated, then there's a correlation that more likely for them to commit crimes. A lot of crimes are committed in Sweden or France. So crime rate goes up. They're getting free money and free child benefit and whatnot. And so they're just living there for free. I do understand about resentment that they're feeding the local natives, the French and Swedish. Same in Germany, but less. But again, Germany accepted the biggest number of refugees in Europe. They accepted like 100,000 or something like that. And the question is, they do accept refugees, but they push refugees to the eastern side of Germany, like some suburban areas. And the locals who have been living there quietly are suddenly like living with those neighbors, like refugees. They don't speak language. They don't have like jobs. I don't know if they have jobs, but they probably don't have jobs because they cannot adapt to, local German culture with language skills, occupational skills, a lot of issues, right? And they're gonna probably commit more crimes. And there's an incident that really made a German angry, which was in Cologne, like New Year's Eve or something, in a public area in front of a cathedral. A lot of brown, like Arabic or Middle Eastern guys, like refugees, did a massive sexual harassment kind of thing, right? And then that's like 2015 or 16 or 17. That kind of thing happens. Who is going to be responsible for that? If you're letting in people and they are free to live in Germany, but they might not be able to find a job. They might not be able to integrate to the country because they don't speak language. It's kind of like, who's going to take care of that if they commit crimes, or if they're going to be like on the street for forever? That's going to increase crime rate. That's going to decrease integration of society, right? So a lot of bad examples are in Western Europe, France, Germany, Sweden, right? And Canada is doing well, but this is really difficult because Japan is also lucky, and Russia is also lucky. Poland is also lucky because they don't face, their borders are not next to those countries. Whereas Germany or Italy or France, they are close to Africa, across the Mediterranean Ocean. Canada is not facing Mexico, so it's less of a burden. Japan is like island, so they're lucky, I was watching a documentary yesterday about China, western side of China, facing Tajikistan or like Kazakhstan or those countries like Middle East, like Muslim countries. And a lot of people in like western side of China are actually ethnically not like Han Chinese. They're more from those Middle Eastern heritage, and they don't speak the same language, different culture, different religion, and there's like terrorist attack happened, and then after that, China started like a re-education camp, kind of segregating, parents and kids and doing some horrible thing like, brainwashing kind of stuff. If your country faces, the border with other country, which doesn't share country, language or religion or basic fundamental belief system, then it'll be a pain in the ass. And the United States is facing Mexico. I know this is a kind of long-winded video, but United States facing Mexico, and when the economic imbalance is so huge, then there's a lot of like conflict of interest. The obvious ulterior motive for those people from a lower economy wants to move to country with more money, right? So Mexicans obviously want to go to the United States because they can make more money and they have better life, obviously, and also selling drugs and stuff like that, make money. So a lot of bad motives from Mexico, like Mexicans. They do climb over the fence and try to sell drugs and go back and stuff like that. I'm not saying all the people would do that, but when economic disparity is so big, then it gets more difficult. Same as from African refugees going to like wealthy country. Obviously, people from poor countries gonna be more desperate, right? whereas Japanese want to immigrate to United States, they are not so desperate because they're from developed countries. So financial power, disparity, stuff like that creates a little more desperation, and that increases like a crime rate for sure because of the drugs. When it comes to Mexican case, right? So I cannot really draw a line when it comes to this immigration policy. There's a conflict of interests always, national interest, which is protect their country, protect their citizen, and their number one priority is to increase or promote prosperity for their own citizen. Whereas humanity side, liberal side is like, oh, we cannot abandon those people who are seeking asylum. I do understand that, like in the human aspect of it. So where is like fine balance? And when it comes to this, lucky countries are those countries that are not facing the border with those countries. Canada, Japan, UK, they tend to be a little more chill because there's no physical, connection, right, between other country and their own country. So they are secluded, isolated. So there's no physical threat of people actually crossing over the fence like Mexican to, American border, or people trying to sneak into the boat and then go to Italy or like Spain from Africa, Morocco, whatnot. So Canada is doing pretty good. If Canada was facing Mexico on the border, then it would be probably a different story, right? The more physical, inevitable force being played into this equation. Japan, pretty good. But Japan and also Russia, Poland, Czech Republic, and all those are Eastern European countries, and then Japan tend to be more strict when it comes to immigration policy, and that's kind of opposite approach from a Western European or Western society's approach, which is like more mild about immigration policy. But there's a question remains: what is the integration strategy, right? Language, culture, values of the culture, stability of the majority of the society, right? When a lot of Middle Eastern, like African refugees go to Norway is doing a program to teach Norwegian value to those immigrants, like refugees. But those refugees are, coming from different value, and then they go to program, but they don't care. There's a documentary about it, how those Middle Eastern value about men and women. Basically, men is above women, and the women oppressed. But in their region, that's okay. But in Norway, those refugees cannot treat Norwegian women like that, right? So they need to adapt because they are going to be a guest to those countries as refugees or immigrants. So they cannot disrupt the country as refugees or immigrants. So this question remains. And especially the conflict of interest, different values, value system, religion, language, then it'll be more difficult. And especially when economic power is so different, then people is going to be more desperate, and that's going to create a lot more disruption and whatnot. So again, if I were a local or native French or Swedish or German, and if tons of refugees come and then get a free ride for education, healthcare, why I'm paying 40+% tax, I'll be angry, So I think it comes down to how much of them should they accept. They should draw a fine balance, I'm not saying 0 or 100, but obviously people are trying to make a living in Germany as well, or Japan or France. So they cannot, make those locals feel so resentful. That's it, guys. Thank you guys so much.